I used to believe that theft was something that happened in dark alleys or through shattered windows, violent and loud, but the morning my life fell apart. The room was perfectly quiet. I looked down at my phone, expecting a mundane balance update, and saw only 2 words in red access denied. My parents hadn't just broken into my bank account, they had broken into my future, targeting $480,000 without ever making a sound. The early morning light in Briar Glen always had a particular quality to it, a soft, diffused gray that made the world feel manageable. I sat at my small kitchen table, the surface cluttered with the remnants of my breakfast and the neatly stacked papers that represented the single biggest decision of my life. It was a Tuesday, an ordinary day by any standard definition, but for me, it was the finish line of a marathon I had been running for 5 years. I picked up the pen, feeling the weight of it in my hand. The document in front of me was the final disclosure for a condo purchase. It was not a grand estate. It was a 2-bedroom unit on the 2nd floor of a refurbished brick building near the park. With a balcony that looked out over a row of oak trees, it cost $240,000, a sum that felt astronomical and entirely real. I had saved the down payment myself, dollar by diligent dollar, siphoning 10% of my paycheck every 2 weeks into a high-yield savings account that I nicknamed the Fortress. I was 32 years old. In the grand scheme of the American dream, buying a starter home in your 30s was hardly headline news. But for me, Lucy Patterson, this paperwork was evidence of something far more fragile than creditworthiness. It was proof that I existed outside the gravity well of my parents. I took a sip of coffee, savoring the bitterness. I felt a quiet, thrumming pride in my chest. I was doing this alone. I had not asked for help. I had not asked for advice. I had simply done the math, found a realtor, and made it happen. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a notification from my calendar, wire transfer deadline, 12:00 p.m. Right, the earnest money. I needed to send the final $5,000 to the title company before noon to lock in the closing date. I set the pen down and picked up my phone. I unlocked the screen and tapped the icon for my banking app. It was a reflex I had performed 1,000 times. Check the balance, tap transfer, verify, done. The blue logo pulsed for a second, spinning in the center of the white screen. I waited for the familiar dashboard to appear, the one that showed my checking account, my savings, and the credit card I paid off in full every month. The screen flashed. Access denied. The words were stark, printed in a red, sans serif font against a gray background. Below them, a smaller message read, "For your security, access to this profile has been restricted. Please contact the fraud prevention team immediately." I stared at the phone. My first instinct was irritation, the mundane annoyance of modern technology failing at the exact moment it was needed. It was probably a glitch. The bank's app was notorious for crashing after updates, or maybe I had mistyped my thumbprint, pressing the sensor at an odd angle. I closed the app, swiped it away from my running tasks, and reopened it. The blue logo spun. Access denied. This time, the irritation was laced with a thin thread of unease. I looked at the time. It was 8:15 in the morning. I had plenty of time before the noon deadline, but I hated complications. I liked smooth lines and predictable outcomes. I opened my email app, thinking perhaps there was a maintenance notice I had missed. The inbox refreshed. At the very top, there was an email from the bank's security alert system. The subject line made my stomach tighten. Alert new device sign-in attempt detected. I tapped the email open. The text was clinical and precise. We detected a sign-in attempt from a new device on Tuesday, October 14th, at 4:12 in the morning. Location Merriwick. The name of the town hit me like a physical blow. I stopped breathing for a second. Merriwick was not a metropolis where hackers set up server farms. It was a quiet, wealthy suburb 2 hours south of Briar Glen. It was a town of manicured lawns, country clubs, and silent, heavy houses. It was the town where I grew up. It was the town where my parents, Gordon and Marlene Patterson, still lived. I sat very still. The air in the kitchen suddenly felt too warm. My mind raced through the logical explanations. Could a hacker route their signal through a specific residential town? Maybe. Was it a coincidence? A glitch in the geolocation software. But the timestamp gnawed at me. 4:12 in the morning. I dialed the number listed on the back of my debit card. My fingers felt cold. I listened to the automated voice listing options, pressing 0 repeatedly until the system surrendered and connected me to a human being. First, security fraud prevention. "This is Marcus," the voice said. It was calm, professional, and utterly detached. "Can I have your full name? Please, Lucy Patterson." I said. My voice sounded steady, which surprised me. "I am trying to log into my app to authorize a wire transfer for a home closing, and I am getting an access denied message." "One moment. Ms. Patterson, let me pull up your file." I heard the click of keys. The silence stretched. I looked out the window at the oak trees I was supposed to be owning by the end of the week. They looked distant now, like a picture in a magazine rather than a reality I could touch. "Okay," Marcus said. "I see the issue. We placed a temporary lock on the profile early this morning. There were multiple failed attempts to reset your password. I didn't do that." I said, "I was asleep." "We assumed as much," Marcus said. "The system flagged it because the attempts came from a device we didn't recognize, and the user failed the two-factor authentication twice. However, on the third attempt, they successfully answered the security questions." My grip on the phone tightened. "They answered the security questions I asked." "Yes," Marcus said. "Mother's maiden name, name of your first pet, street you lived on in 3rd grade." I felt a cold prickle of sweat on my neck. Those were not difficult questions for a determined criminal to find. Perhaps, but they were also the exact questions that a parent would know without having to look. After the password was reset, Marcus continued. "The user attempted to add an external transfer destination." "What destination?" I asked. "It was labeled as a business account," Marcus said. "The name on the destination profile was Crown Ridge Capital." I frowned. I had never heard of Crown Ridge Capital. "I don't know who that is." I said, "I have no relationship with any company by that name. That is why we flagged it," Marcus said. "The transfer request was initiated immediately after the new device sign-in. It triggered our velocity limits. But, Ms. Patterson, there is something else you should know." What I asked. "The security freeze automatically extended to all accounts connected by your relationship profile," Marcus said. "That includes your personal checking, your savings, and the trust account." The trust account. The words hung in the air, heavy and ominous. I rarely thought about the trust. It was a separate entity, a legacy from my grandmother, Evelyn Hartwell. It contained $480,000, a sum she had set aside for me with strict instructions. It was not managed through the app. It was held by a fiduciary firm, Hartley and Sloan. Though the balances were visible through my bank's dashboard as a courtesy, someone tried to access the trust I asked. "Yes," Marcus said. "The logs show they attempted to navigate to the Trust Administration tab. That is actually what triggered the final hard lock. The trust has higher security protocols than the checking account." I closed my eyes. "Where did the attempt come from?" I asked, though I already knew. "The IP address resolves to a residential provider in Marwick." Marcus said, "Thank you." I said, my voice was faint, "Can you unlock it?" "I can unlock your checking and savings once we verify your identity right now." Marcus said, "But for the trust, you might have to contact the administrator directly. The bank cannot override a fiduciary lock." We went through the verification process. I answered the questions mechanically. Yes. My date of birth. Yes. The last 4 digits of my social. Yes. The amount of my last deposit. When I hung up, my checking account was accessible again. I could send the wire, I could buy the condo, but the joy was gone. I sat there, the phone dark in my hand. Marwick. 4 in the morning. Security questions that my mother had probably helped me set up 10 years ago when I opened the account. I had to call them. I didn't want to. A part of me, a small, cowardly part, wanted to pretend this was a random cyber attack, but I was 32. and I was buying a house, and I could not afford to be a coward. I dialed my mother's number. She answered on the second ring. Lucy. Her voice was a burst of manicured sunshine. We were just talking about you. Dad is out on the patio. How are you? Sweetie? She sounded normal. Too normal. There was a practiced lilt to her voice, the kind she used when neighbors were within earshot. Mom, I said, I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I had a problem with my bank this morning. Oh, she said. There was a pause, a tiny, imperceptible hesitation. What kind of problem? Someone locked me out. I said. They tried to reset my passwords at 4 a.m. The bank said the attempt came from Merriwick. I waited. I waited for the shock. I waited for the outrage. I waited for her to ask if I was okay, if my money was safe. Instead, her voice dropped an octave. It became smooth, soothing, and terrifyingly calm. Oh, honey, don't worry about that. The hairs on my arms stood up. What I asked, we are handling it, she said. It is just a little administrative hiccup. Dad was doing some reorganization with the family portfolio last night, and he might have gotten some of the login credentials crossed. You know how he is with technology. I felt like the floor had dissolved. Mom, I said slowly, that is my personal bank account. It is not part of a family portfolio. Dad does not have my login credentials. Well, he was just trying to streamline things, she said. Her tone shifted, becoming slightly sharper. The way one speaks to a child who is asking too many questions before bedtime. We are looking at some investment opportunities that would really benefit everyone, including you. We just wanted to make sure all the accounts were compatible. Compatible, I repeated. You tried to add a transfer destination. Crown Ridge Capital. Who is that? Don't get bogged down in the details. Lucy. She said, the point is, we are acting in your best interest. You are so busy with your job and this little apartment you are renting. We just want to make sure your future is secure. I am not renting. I said, I am buying. I am closing on a condo today. There was silence on the other end. Cold, heavy silence. You are buying, she said. Her voice was flat. Yes, I said. That is why I need it into my account, to send the money. Lucy, she said. And now the sweetness was gone, replaced by a stern, disappointed weight. You are not ready for a mortgage. We have discussed this. You are too impulsive. You take on too much. I am 32. I said, I have saved the money, and now you are locking us out of helping you, she asked. We are just trying to protect the family assets. Lucy, that trust fund isn't just play money for you to throw at real estate. It is my money. I said, Grandma left it to me. She left it to the family. My mother snapped. To be managed. Look, just let Dad handle the bank. Don't do anything rash. We will fix the access issues on our end. Just sit tight. She hung up. I stared at the phone. We will fix the access issues on our end, as if my autonomy was the error they were debugging. I stood up and walked to the window. My hands were shaking. I thought of my grandmother, Evelyn. I closed my eyes and saw her sitting in her library, a cigarette burning in the ashtray, her sharp eyes watching me play on the rug. Money makes people honest, one way or another, she used to say. It clears away the fog. You give a man $1 million, and you will see exactly who he is. You take $1 away from a man who thinks he is entitled to it, and you will see a monster. I had always thought she was being dramatic. Now, standing in my kitchen with the phantom warmth of my mother's gaslighting still in my ear, I realized she was simply being accurate. The trust. They were after the trust. I couldn't stay in the apartment. The walls felt like they were closing in. I needed to get out. I needed to see someone who lived in the real world, someone who didn't view me as a piece of property to be managed. I grabbed my keys and drove to 3rd Street Roasters. Tessa was there, sitting at our usual corner table, her laptop open. She was my best friend, the one person who knew the specific, suffocating texture of my childhood. She looked up as I approached. Her smile faded instantly when she saw my face. "What is it?" she asked. I sat down. I didn't even get coffee. I just leaned across the table and whispered the whole story. The app, the location, the questions, my mother's voice saying we are handling it. Tessa listened without interrupting. She was a lawyer, a fierce, sharp-witted woman who had spent years telling me that my parents' concern was actually control. When I finished, she sat back. "Lucy," she said, "you know what this is, right? They are in trouble." I said, "I tried to make it make sense. Maybe Dad made a bad deal. Maybe they are desperate." "Stop," Tessa said. She reached out and tapped my hand. "Stop making excuses for them. This isn't desperation. This is entitlement. They tried to break into your account at 4 a.m. They guessed your security questions. They didn't have to guess." I said quietly, "They knew them." "Exactly," Tessa said. "That is the point. They used their knowledge of you as a weapon against you." I felt tears pricking my eyes. I hated crying. I hated feeling weak. I am scared I'm overreacting. I said, "Maybe I should just hear them out. Maybe Lucy," Tessa said, her voice hard. "You have been trained like a show dog to doubt your own instincts. Every time you have a gut feeling that they are crossing a line, you tell yourself you are being ungrateful. That is not an accident. That is programming." She leaned forward. "If a stranger did this, what would you do?" "I would call the police," I said. "Then why is it different because they share your DNA?" She asked. "Theft is theft." She was right. I knew she was right. But the emotional tether was thick and knotted. It was hard to cut. "You need to go to the bank." Tessa said, "Not the app, the branch. You need to look someone in the eye and see exactly what damage was done. And you need to see the logs." I nodded. "You are right," I said. I left the coffee shop and drove to the main branch of First Security. It was a sterile, glass-walled building downtown. I walked in, clutching my purse, feeling like a child who had stolen something, even though I was the victim. I sat at a desk across from a banker named Mr. Henderson. He was young, efficient, and kind. I told him I needed a full review of the security breach. He typed for a moment, his face illuminated by the blue light of the screen. "I see the notes from the fraud team," he said, "but Ms. Patterson, there is something here that wasn't in the initial alert, what I asked." He turned the screen slightly. "There were calls to customer service yesterday," he said. "2 of them." "Calls?" I asked. "Yes. A woman claiming to be you called the support line. She wanted to know the daily transfer limits for the trust account." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Did she pass verification?" I asked. "Mr. Henderson nodded slowly. "She had your social security number. She knew your mother's maiden name. She knew the amount of the last deposit into your checking account." I felt sick. My mother, it had to be. She had been tracking my deposits. "How? And this, Mr. Henderson said. He clicked on a file icon. "This was uploaded to the document center last night around 9 o'clock. He opened a PDF. It was a scanned document. The image was grainy but legible. Limited power verification. It was a form authorizing a third party to act on my behalf for financial restructuring. I leaned in, my breath catching in my throat. At the bottom of the page, there was a signature. Lucy Patterson. It looked like my signature. It had the slant, the spacing. But the loop on the P was slightly too wide. It was the way I signed things when I was 20. Not now. I didn't sign this. I whispered, "Mr. Henderson looked at me with pity. It was accepted by the system. He said gently, "The notary stamp is valid. It is from a shipping store in Merriwick." Merriwick. Again. I stared at the forgery. It wasn't just a lie. It was a crime. A felony. "Is this active?" I asked. "It is on the profile." "Mr. Henderson said, "We can flag it as disputed now. But Miss Patterson, you should know that this document wasn't just uploaded to us. It looks like it was part of a packet sent to the trust administrator as well. The trust. If they had this document, they didn't need my password. They could just walk in through the front door of the fiduciary firm and demand the money." "Who is the trust administrator, Mr. Henderson asked. "Hartley and Sloan." I said, "You might want to contact them." He said, "If they receive this document, they might already be processing requests." I stood up. My legs felt like lead. "Thank you," I said. I walked out of the bank into the bright, blinding sunshine. I felt naked. I felt exposed. My parents had not just tried to steal money. They had stolen my identity. They had impersonated me. They had forged my name. I sat in my car in the parking lot. I looked at my phone. My mother had texted me 3 times. "Call us. Don't be difficult. We love you." The words, "we love you," looked like a threat. I started the engine. I could go home. I could go back to my apartment and hide. But the anger was rising now, burning off the fog of confusion. They thought I was weak. They thought I would roll over. They thought that if they just said family enough times, I would let them cannibalize my future. I put the car in gear. I was not going home. I pulled up the address for Hartley and Sloan Fiduciary Services. It was a 40-minute drive, deep in the city's financial district. I wasn't going to ask my parents any more questions. I knew the answer. The answer was in the forged signature. The answer was in the phone call where my mother pretended to be me. I merged onto the highway, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I was going to the fiduciary. I was going to see exactly how far they had gone, and I was going to stop them. My grandmother was right. Money made people honest, and my parents were about to find out that it made me honest, too. I drove toward the skyline, leaving Marowak and its secrets in the rearview mirror. I was done being the daughter. I was the plaintiff now. The road stretched out before me, straight and unforgiving. I pressed the accelerator. I was coming for the truth, and I wasn't asking nicely. The lobby of Hartley and Sloan Fiduciary Services smelled of old paper and aggressive climate control. It was a scent designed to make you feel safe, or at least to make you feel that your money was being watched by people who did not sweat. I walked up to the reception desk, my heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. I was 32 years old, a project manager who managed million-dollar budgets for a logistics firm. But standing there, I felt like a child who had been called to the principal's office. "I am here to see a trust officer." I told the receptionist, "My name is Lucy Patterson. I do not have an appointment, but I believe there has been a security breach on my account." The receptionist, a woman with perfect posture and a headset that looked like a piece of jewelry, typed my name into her terminal. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "One moment, Ms. Patterson," she said. She made a call. I stood there, clutching my purse, trying to breathe through the tightness in my chest. The drive over had given me time to think, but thinking had only made the panic worse. My parents, my bank, the access denied screen. It all felt like a fever dream. A few minutes later, a woman walked out from the double doors behind the desk. She was tall, wearing a charcoal suit that looked tailored to within an inch of its life. She had dark hair pulled back in a severe bun and glasses that magnified her intent gaze. "Ms. Patterson," she asked. "I am Maya Klein. I am the senior officer on the Hartwell accounts. Please, come back." Her office was quiet. That was the first thing I noticed. It was a silence so deep it felt expensive. The city noise was filtered out by thick glass, leaving only the hum of a computer server. She gestured to a leather chair, and I sat down. "I want to know what is happening." I said, "I went to my bank this morning. They told me someone tried to access the trust. They uploaded a document." Maya sat behind her desk and folded her hands. She looked at me with a calm that was almost unnerving. "We received a digital request yesterday afternoon." She said, "It came through our secure portal. The request was to modify the distribution instructions for the Hartwell-Patterson Trust. Modify how I asked. The request was to add a new beneficiary category." Maya said, "Specifically, a category labeled Family Support Expense, and it included a directive to authorize a recurring monthly transfer of $8,000 to an external account." $8,000. I felt the blood drain from my face. That was nearly my entire monthly take-home pay for my job. They wanted to siphon off a salary from my inheritance. I did not authorize that. I said, "I have never heard of a family support expense category. We flagged it immediately." Maya said, "The language used in the request was unusual. It did not match the tone of your previous communications, And the external account was not in your name. It was a joint account held by Gordon and Marlene Patterson, my parents. I stared at the edge of her desk. Hearing it out loud made it real in a way that the bank alerts had not. Did you process it? I asked. No. Maya said, the Hartwell Trust has strict safeguards regarding principal distributions. Your grandmother, Evelyn Hartwell, was very specific when she drafted the instrument. No principal can be distributed without direct identity confirmation and a documented purpose that aligns with the trust's intent. However, the person who submitted the request attempted to bypass these safeguards. How? I asked. Maya turned her monitor slightly so she could look at a document, but she kept the screen angled away from me. They uploaded a file, she said, a legal document. It is titled, A Certificate of Incapacity. The words hung in the air like smoke. Incapacity, I whispered. Yes, Maya said. The submission claimed that due to a recent medical crisis, you were temporarily unable to manage your financial affairs. It asserted that your parents were acting as your emergency guardians and were therefore authorized to direct funds for your care and for the maintenance of family stability. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to grip the arms of the chair. Incapacitated, that was the word they used for people in comas. For people with severe dementia, for people who had lost their minds. They said I was crazy. I asked. My voice shook. The document references a psychological episode. Maya said carefully, it claims you are currently in a state of acute distress and require supervision. I stood up. I couldn't sit anymore. I walked to the window and looked out at the gray skyline. I was buying a condo. I had a job. I had a credit score of 780. I had watered my plants this morning. I was not incapacitated. This is a lie, I said to the glass. This is a complete fabrication. They are trying to steal the money. I know, Maya said. I turned around. She was watching me, and for the first time. Her professional mask slipped just a fraction. There was pity in her eyes. But it was a sharp, useful kind of pity. You know, I asked. We rejected the request. Maya said, the document they uploaded was notarized, but the medical addendum was signed by a general practitioner in Marowik, not a specialist, and the signature on the authorization form. Well, it did not match the sample we have on file from when you turned 25. I walked back to the desk. They tried to say I was crazy so they could take the money. I said, it wasn't just theft. It was a narrative. Maya said, they were trying to change the legal story of who you are. If we had accepted that document, Ms. Patterson, it would have created a precedent. It would have established a record that you were unfit. I realized then that the money was almost secondary. If they had succeeded, if they had established legal guardianship over my finances, they could have unwound everything, my job, my apartment, my independence. They could have dragged me back to Marowik and locked me in my childhood bedroom, claiming it was for my own good. What do? I asked. Maya opened a drawer and pulled out a notepad. I cannot disclose the full contents of the attempted upload without a subpoena because, technically, it involves third-party medical claims, even if they are false, she said. But I can tell you what you need to do to protect yourself. She wrote 3 things on the paper. First, she said, you need to file a police report for identity fraud. You need a case number. Without it, this is just a family dispute. With it, it is a crime. I nodded. Second, she continued, you need to lock your credit, immediately. If they are trying to access liquid cash, and that failed, they will look for other avenues. They have your social security number. They have your history. Third, she said, handing me the paper, you need a lawyer, not a family friend, not someone who knows your parents. You need a litigator who specializes in trust disputes and fraud. I took the paper. My hand was trembling. Thank you. Maya, I said. She stood up and walked me to the door. Ms. Patterson, she said quietly, your grandmother left a note in the file, just a sticky note on the original deed. What did it say? I asked. It said, watch the parents. I left the building feeling like I had been punched in the gut. Grandma Evelyn had known. She had known 30 years ago what I was just figuring out now. I sat in my car in the parking garage. The silence of the underground structure was heavy. I looked at the list Maya had given me. Lock credit. I dialed the number for the National Credit Bureau hotline. I had to navigate a maze of automated prompts, my patience fraying with every robotic menu option. Finally, I got through to a fraud specialist. I need to freeze my credit. I said, I think my parents are using my identity. We can certainly help with that, the voice said. Let me just pull up your recent activity to verify. There was a pause. Ms. Patterson, the specialist said, did you apply for a personal loan yesterday? No. I said, we see an inquiry from a lender called Rapid Cash Solutions. The specialist said, and another one from a provider specializing in medical financing. It is labeled as a family medical loan. A family medical loan. They were doubling down. If they couldn't get the cash from the trust, they were going to borrow it in my name, using the fake incapacity story as the justification for the medical expense. They were going to drain the trust and saddle me with debt. They were going to bury me. Freeze it. I said, freeze everything. No one opens a lemonade stand in my name without a PIN code. Done, the specialist said. I hung up. I stared at the concrete wall of the garage. I needed a lawyer. I called the only person I trusted at work, a senior partner named David who had gone through a nasty divorce. He picked up on the first ring. David, I said, I need a name. I need the meanest, most paranoid trust attorney you know. He didn't ask questions. He just gave me a name. Rowan Pierce. Rowan Pierce's office was not in a glass tower. It was in a brownstone in the old legal district, a place with creaky floors and stacks of files that looked like they might topple over. Rowan himself was a man in his 50s with messy gray hair and a tie that was loosened at the collar. He looked like he had slept in his office. But his eyes were sharp and clear. He listened to me for 20 minutes without interrupting. I told him everything: the bank glitch, the call to my mother, the limited power verification, the meeting with Maya, the credit inquiries. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. So, he said, his voice was gravelly, they are going for the incapacity play. That is bold, stupid, but bold. Can we stop them, I asked. We can do more than stop them, Rowan said. We can nail their feet to the floor. But you have to understand something. Lucy, this is not a misunderstanding. This is not your parents getting confused about how online banking works. I know. I said, do you? Rowan asked. He looked at me over his reading glasses. Because most clients in your position spend the first 6 months trying to find a way to interpret the betrayal as a mistake. They tell me, oh, my dad just panicked, or my mom is just anxious. He leaned forward. This is an organized attempt, Rowan said. They forged a signature. They created a medical narrative. They lined up a notary. They timed it to coincide with the end of the financial quarter. This is a heist. I nodded. The word heist felt right. What do I do? I asked. First, we draft a cease and desist to the bank and the fiduciary, Rowan said. We put them on notice that any instruction coming from anyone other than you is fraudulent. That protects the money. And then you give me a timeline, Rowan said. He pushed a yellow legal pad across the desk. I want you to write down every interaction you have had with your parents in the last 6 months. Texts, calls, emails. Look for the pattern. I looked at the pad. What pattern, I asked. Reconnaissance, Rowan said. They didn't just wake up yesterday and decide to do this. They have been planning it. They have been testing the fences. I spent the next hour in his office, scrolling through my phone. It was sickening. I saw it now. The texts from my mother that I had interpreted as casual check-ins were actually data mining. August 12th. Are you still using that same phone plan with the data cap? Dad was looking at family bundles. She was checking if I had changed my provider so she could answer the security questions. September 4th, what is your schedule like next month? Are you still traveling for that big logistics project? She wanted to know when I would be distracted, when I wouldn't be checking my accounts. October 1st. Did you ever get around to updating your address on your passport? I found an old form in the study. She was fishing for document expiration dates. I felt a cold sweat break out on my back. I had fed them the information. I had handed them the keys to the house while they smiled and told me they loved me. Rowan watched me write. "You see it?" he asked. "I see it." I said, "Good," he said. "Now, here is the hard part. You have to go see them." I looked up. "What I need you to go to dinner," Rowan said. "Don't confront them. Don't scream. Don't tell them you have a lawyer. Just go. Be the daughter. Let them think the plan is working. Let them think the delay at the bank is just a glitch." Why, I asked. "Because I need to know what the deadline is," Rowan said. "They are desperate. People don't commit felony fraud unless they are on a clock. If we know what the clock is, we know how to break them." I drove to Marowak that evening. The drive took 2 hours, and every mile felt like I was driving backward in time. The landscape changed from the city's sharp angles to the rolling, manicured hills of the suburbs. The houses got bigger, the lawns greener, the silence deeper. My parents' house was a colonial revival with white pillars and black shutters. It looked like a picture on a postcard. It looked like the kind of place where nothing bad could ever happen. I pulled into the driveway. My father's BMW was parked in its usual spot. My mother's garden was perfectly weeded. I took a deep breath. "Act normal," Rowan had said. "Be the daughter." I walked to the front door and unlocked it with my key. "Mom." "Dad," I called out. My mother appeared from the kitchen. She was wearing a cashmere cardigan and holding a glass of white wine. She looked impeccable. She looked like a woman who had never filled out a fraudulent medical form in her life. "Lucy," she cried. She rushed forward and hugged me. She smelled of lavender and Chardonnay. It was the smell of my childhood. I stiffened, then forced myself to relax. I hugged her back. "Hi, Mom," I said. "I was just in the area for work and thought I would stop by." "Oh, we are so glad you did," she said, pulling back to look at me. "You look tired. Honey, are you eating enough?" The concern in her eyes was so convincing. If I didn't know about the certificate of incapacity, I would have believed her. I would have thought she was just a worried mother. "I am fine." I said, "Just busy." "Gordon," she called out, "Lucy is here." My father walked in from the patio. He was a big man, broad-shouldered, with a booming voice that he used to dominate every room he entered. He was wearing his golf polo. "Lucy Goose," he said. "What a surprise." He hugged me, a heavy, suffocating squeeze. "How is my girl?" he asked. Still fighting the corporate fight, I smiled. It felt like I was wearing a mask made of clay. "You know me, Dad," I said, "always working." "Come, sit," he said, guiding me to the living room. "Let's get you a drink." I sat on the beige sofa. The room was exactly as I remembered it. The family photos on the mantel, the antique clock ticking in the corner. It was a museum of a happy family. "So," my father said, handing me a glass of sparkling water. "Any news on that bank trouble you mentioned?" He asked it casually, as if asking about the weather, but I saw his eyes. They were tight at the corners. He was watching me. "Oh, that," I said, waving my hand. "I think it is sorted. The bank said it was just a system update. They said access should be restored in a day or two." I lied. I watched them absorb the lie. My mother exchanged a quick glance with my father, a micro-expression of relief. "That is good," she said. "We were so worried. We didn't want you to be stressed." I sipped my water. "Yeah," I said. "It was weird, though. They mentioned something about a transfer to Crown Ridge Capital." I dropped the name deliberately. I wanted to see what would happen. My father didn't flinch, but his hand tightened on his glass. "Crown Ridge," he said. "Never heard of them. Probably just a glitch in the code. You know how these computers are." "Right," I said. "Computers." We had dinner in the dining room. Roast chicken and vegetables. The conversation was excruciating. They asked about my job, about my friends, about everything except the one thing that mattered. They were performing normalcy, and I was performing ignorance. But underneath the pleasantries, there was a tension. My mother's laughter was too loud. My father kept checking his watch. "Lucy," my mother said, cutting into her chicken. "Have you been feeling okay lately?" I looked up. "What do you mean? You just seem a little on edge," she said. "A little scattered. We worry about you. Living alone in the city, the stress can get to people." Here it was, the groundwork for the incapacity narrative. She was trying to get me to agree that I was stressed, that I was unstable. "I am fine, Mom," I said. "Actually, I feel great." "Are you sure?" she pressed. "You know, there is no shame in needing a break, needing someone to step in and help carry the load for a while." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had taught me to tie my shoes, who had sat in the front row of my graduation. She was trying to gaslight me into signing away my autonomy. "I don't need anyone to carry the load." I said, "I am strong. Grandma taught me that." My father cleared his throat loudly. "Evelyn was a tough bird," he said, but even she knew when to delegate. After dinner, my father excused himself to take a call. He walked out to the patio, sliding the glass door shut behind him. My mother started clearing the table. "I will help," I said. No, you sit," she insisted. "You are the guest." I sat for a moment, then stood up. "I am just going to use the restroom," I said. I walked into the hallway, but instead of going to the bathroom, I crept toward the patio door. The curtains were drawn, but the glass was thin. I pressed my ear against the frame. My father was pacing. I could hear the crunch of his shoes on the stone pavers. "I know," I heard him say. His voice was a harsh whisper. "I know the date. Pause. We are working on it," he hissed. "The girl is stalling. The bank is dragging its feet with the verification." Pause. "Look, I signed the guarantee. Didn't I? You will get your money before the end of the quarter. Just hold off on the lien." My heart stopped. Before the end of the quarter, that was 3 days away. The lien. He wasn't just investing. He was in debt. Deep debt. He had signed a personal guarantee, and now the creditors were coming for the house, coming for everything, and he was going to use my trust fund to plug the hole. I pulled away from the door. I had heard enough. I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked the same, but I wasn't. I was a witness now. I walked back into the living room. My father came in a moment later. He looked flushed, sweaty. "Everything okay, Dad?" I asked. "Fine," he said. "Just work, always work." He forced a smile. It was a gruesome thing, stretching the skin over his teeth without reaching his eyes. "I should go," I said. "I have an early meeting tomorrow." They walked me to the door. My mother hugged me again. "Take care of yourself." "Lucy," she whispered, "we just want you to be safe." I felt the lie vibrate in her chest. "I know. Mom," I said. I walked to my car. I got in and locked the doors. I didn't start the engine immediately. I watched them standing in the doorway, bathed in the warm yellow light of the porch. They looked like the perfect parents. They looked like safety. I backed out of the driveway. I didn't cry. I wanted to. I wanted to scream and pound the steering wheel. But crying was for the girl who thought this was a misunderstanding. I was not that girl anymore. I reached for my phone and opened the voice memo app. Rowan had told me to document everything. I hit record. Tuesday, October 14th, 9:30 p.m., I said to the empty car. I just left my parents' house in Marwick. I merged onto the highway, the dark road swallowing the light of the suburbs. My father is in debt. I dictated. I overheard him on the phone with a creditor. He mentioned a deadline before the end of the quarter. He mentioned a lien. He told them he would get the money. I paused, taking a breath. My mother tried to get me to admit I was mentally unstable. I continued. She used the word scattered. She suggested I needed someone to step in. They are coordinating the incapacity narrative to match the document they uploaded to the fiduciary. I looked at the road ahead. They are not confused. I said, they are desperate, and they are willing to destroy my reputation to save their own assets. I stopped the recording. The silence in the car was absolute. I had the timeline. I had the motive. I had the lawyer. But as I drove back toward Briar Glen, toward the empty apartment that was my only real sanctuary. I realized I had lost something that no court order could return. I had lost the ability to ever look at them and see anything other than thieves. The access denied message on my phone was no longer just about a bank account. It was the permanent status of our relationship. I turned on the radio, drowning out the silence with static. I drove fast. I had a war to plan. And the end of the quarter was only 3 days away. I was not going to let them win. I was going to let them break themselves against the wall of my refusal. Grandma Evelyn's voice came back to me, clearer than ever. Watch the parents. I am watching. Grandma. I thought, and I see everything. The paper Rowan Pierce slid across his desk was heavy, bonded, and smelled faintly of laser toner. It was a formal demand letter, the kind that made corporate legal departments sit up straight and pay attention. The header read, Notice of Spoliation and Demand for Preservation of Evidence. You need to understand how banks work. Lucy, Rowan said, uncapping a pen, they are data hoarders by nature, but they are also data cleaners. Standard protocol for failed login attempts or disputed documents is to purge the temporary caches after 30 days, unless there is an active litigation hold. If we don't send this today, the digital footprints of your parents' little adventure might just vanish into the ether of routine server maintenance. I watched him sign his name. His signature was a jagged, aggressive scrawl, the exact opposite of the careful, looped forgery I had seen on the limited power verification form. So this stops them from deleting the logs, I asked. It makes it illegal for them to delete the logs. Rowan corrected. It freezes the crime scene. We are sending this to the bank, the fiduciary firm, and the credit bureaus. We are telling them that if they scrub a single byte of metadata, we will sue them for negligence. He looked up at me, his eyes tired but sharp. And we are sending a copy to your parents, he added. My stomach turned. To their house. By certified mail, Rowan said. It is the warning shot. It tells them we are not confused. It tells them we are building a case. I nodded, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and nausea. Sending a legal threat to the people who taught me how to ride a bike felt unnatural, a violation of the biological order, but then I remembered the phrase I had overheard on the patio. Before the end of the quarter, they were on a deadline. I had to be faster. One more thing, Rowan said, the notary. I pulled the photocopy of the forged document from my bag. I had stared at it so many times the image was burned into my retinas. The stamp was blurry, but the commission number was legible. Pack parcel, 412 Main Street, Merriwick. I know where this is, I said. It is next to the dry cleaner where my mother takes her table linens. Go there, Rowan said. Don't make a scene. Just ask to see the logbook. In this state, notaries are required to keep a journal of every signature they witness. If your signature is in there, there has to be a thumbprint or a driver's license number recorded next to it. And if I wasn't there, I asked, then they committed fraud, Rowan said. And the notary is an accessory. Go get the page. Lucy, I drove to Merriwick for the second time in 2 days. The town looked different to me now. It wasn't just the place I grew up. It was a crime scene. The manicured hedges and the silent, expansive lawns felt like camouflage for the desperation rotting underneath. The pack parcel was a narrow, cramped store that smelled of cardboard and packing tape. A bell chimed as I walked in, behind the counter. A young man with headphones around his neck was taping up a box. He looked about 20, bored and harmless. Can I help you? He asked, not looking up. I walked to the counter and placed the photocopy of the document on the laminate surface. Hi, I said. My voice was steady, practiced. I need to check a notary entry from Tuesday. There is a question about a signature, and I just need to verify the log. The clerk looked at the paper, then at me. His eyes darted to the name on the document. Lucy Patterson. You are Lucy Patterson, he asked. Yes, I said. I pulled out my driver's license and set it on the counter. He picked it up, compared the photo to my face, and then looked back at the document. He shifted his weight, suddenly uncomfortable. I didn't notarize this. He said quickly, It was my manager, Mrs. Gable. She works the morning shift. Is the logbook here? I asked. He hesitated. Technically, yeah, but I don't know if I can show you. I am the signer, I said, leaning forward slightly. It is my name. I have a right to see the record of my own signature. Unless, of course, I wasn't the one who signed it. The kid swallowed. He reached under the counter and pulled out a thick, spiral-bound ledger. He flipped through the pages, scanning the dates. Tuesday. Here, he said. He spun the book around. There it was. Line 14. Limited power verification. Grantor Lucy Patterson. Grantees Gordon and Marlene Patterson. I looked at the signature column. It was a scribble. And next to it, in the box for identification method, it said, photocopy of DL. My heart hammered against my ribs. Who came in to sign this? I asked. The kid looked at the log, then at me. He lowered his voice. Look, Mrs. Gable mentioned it. She said a couple came in. Older, nice clothes. They said their daughter was in the hospital, in a facility. They said she needed this signed urgently for her treatment. But she couldn't leave the ward. I felt the blood drain from my face. In a facility. They said I was institutionalized, I asked. Yeah, the kid said. They showed a photocopy of your ID. They said it was standard procedure for medical power of attorney, Mrs. Gable. She felt bad for them. The mom was crying. Of course she was crying. My mother could cry on command. She had weaponized her tears decades ago. I took my phone out. I need a picture of this page. I said. The clerk didn't stop me. I snapped a photo of the entry, ensuring the date and the photocopy of DL notation were clear. Thank you, I said. You have been very helpful. I walked out of the store into the bright, blinding sun of the parking lot. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped my keys. They hadn't just forged my name. They had sold a tragedy to a stranger. They had stood in a shipping store and performed a scene of heartbroken parents trying to save their sick daughter. All to steal my money. It was a violation so intimate it felt physical. I drove back to Briar Glen, my mind racing. I went straight to the office, needing the structure of work to hold me together. I sat at my desk, staring at a spreadsheet of logistics projections for the upcoming quarter. The numbers usually soothed me. They were clean. They made sense. But today, the cells blurred. Lucy, I jumped. Elena Marsh, my supervisor, was standing in the doorway of my cubicle. She was a sharp, no-nonsense woman who had mentored me for 3 years. She held 2 coffees. You have been staring at that same row for 20 minutes, she said gently. I blinked, trying to clear the fog. I am sorry. I said, I am just reviewing the variances. Elena set one of the coffees on my desk. She closed the door behind her, cutting off the hum of the open-plan office. I am not asking for details, she said, but I know what a crisis looks like. You are pale, you are vibrating with caffeine, and you have checked your phone 6 times in the last 3 minutes. I looked at her. I wanted to lie. I wanted to say I was fine. But the kindness in her face cracked my armor. I am dealing with a situation, I said. A family legal issue. It is aggressive. Elena nodded. She didn't press. She didn't ask if someone had died or if I was getting divorced. Take the afternoon if you need it, she said, or work from the conference room, Faye. It has a lock and no windows. Whatever you need to handle it, we can cover the projections. I felt a surge of gratitude that was immediately followed by a hot flush of shame. I hated this. I hated being the person who needed accommodation. I had built my career on being the one who solved problems, not the one who had them. Thank you. Elena, I said, I might take the conference room. I have some calls to make. She tapped the desk and left. I watched her go. Realizing that my boss, a woman I had known for 3 years, had shown me more respect in 30 seconds than my parents had shown me in 30 years. My phone buzzed again. Hard, angry. I looked down. It wasn't a call. It was a text notification, a group text, family updates. Aunt Carol, Uncle Mike, Cousin Sarah, Mom, Dad. The thread name made my stomach drop. Updates. My mother had started a thread with the extended family. I opened the message, bracing myself. Mom, hi everyone. We wanted to keep this private, but we know how fast news travels. We are asking for prayers for Lucy right now. She is having a very difficult time with her mental health and has had a serious episode. Gordon and I are stepping in to protect her assets and make sure she gets the care she needs. Please do not overwhelm her with questions. She is confused and might say things that aren't true. We are handling everything. Love, Marlene. I stared at the screen. The air left the room. A serious episode. Confused. Might say things that aren't true. It was a preemptive strike. They knew the litigation hold letters were coming. They knew I had caught them. So now, they were poisoning the well. They were telling the entire family that I was crazy so that when I accused them of theft, everyone would just nod sadly and say, "Poor Lucy. It is part of her illness." My phone lit up with replies instantly. Aunt Carol. "Oh my God. Marlene, we are praying. Is she in the hospital, Uncle Mike? Let us know if you need anything. Stay strong. Gordon, Cousin Sarah Lucy, we love you. Please let your parents help you." I felt a scream building in my throat. It was a perfect trap. If I exploded in the chat, if I typed out a furious defense, I would look unstable. I would look exactly like the confused and difficult daughter they were describing. I put the phone down on the desk. I forced myself to breathe. In for 4 counts. Out for 4 counts. Do not engage, Rowan had said. Do not give them emotional fuel. But I couldn't let this stand. Silence was consent. I picked up the phone. I typed carefully. My fingers stiff. I deleted 3 drafts. I removed the adjectives. I removed the anger. I left only the facts. Hi everyone. I am safe, healthy, and currently at work. There is no medical episode. I am working with legal counsel and fraud investigators regarding some unauthorized activity on my accounts. Please disregard any requests for money or information regarding my finances. I am handling my own affairs. I hit send. Then I took a screenshot of the entire thread. Then I muted the conversation. My hands were shaking. But I felt a cold, hard clarity. They had played their ace card public humiliation, and I had refused to fold. My desk phone rang. It was an external number. Ms. Patterson. It was Maya Klein's voice. Crisp, professional. "Maya," I said, "I was just about to call you. I have proof of the notary fraud." "That is excellent," Maya said. "Bring it to the file. But Lucy, I need you to come in. Today." Why, I asked. "Is there another request?" "No," Maya said. "I was reviewing the original deed of trust. The physical file from the archives. I found something your grandmother left. I thought you said it was a sticky note." I said, "There was a sticky note." Maya said, "But there was also a sealed envelope stapled to the back of the signature page. It has an instruction written on the front. To be opened only in the event of a competency challenge." I froze. "A competency challenge?" I asked. "Yes," Maya said. Evelyn Hartwell anticipated this. She wrote a contingency plan for exactly this scenario. I left work. I didn't care about the spreadsheet anymore. I drove back to the city, to the glass tower, to the office that smelled of money and secrets. Maya was waiting for me. On her desk sat a thick, cream-colored envelope. The wax seal on the back was broken. I opened it this morning after you told me about the certificate of incapacity. Maya said, "I had to. It is my duty as the trustee." She slid a letter toward me. The handwriting was spidery but firm. I recognized it instantly. It was the same handwriting that used to sign my birthday cards with "Buy something useful." Love, Gran. I picked it up. To the trustee. If you are reading this, it means my son Gordon, or his wife Marlene, is attempting to declare my granddaughter Lucy incompetent to manage her inheritance. I am writing this while of sound mind to state unequivocally that I do not trust them. They are charming, they are desperate, and they believe family money is a communal pot for their own debts. I read the words, and I felt tears prick my eyes. She knew. She had seen them clearly, even when I was a child. Therefore, the letter continued, I have established the following condition in the event of any capacity challenge. Neither Gordon nor Marlene Patterson shall ever be appointed as agent, guardian, or steward of this trust. If Lucy requires assistance, the court must appoint a neutral third party. Furthermore, I have designated an advocate to assess Lucy's state of mind before any freeze is applied. Maya pointed to the bottom of the page. She named a specific person. Maya said, a sort of character witness she trusted to override your parents. Who, I asked. Dr. Soren Fielding. Maya said, he is a retired professor of financial ethics. He used to teach at the university where your grandmother sat on the board. The instructions say that if he certifies you are sound, the trust remains yours, regardless of what any doctor in Merriwick says. Is he still alive? I asked. He is, Maya said, and he is expecting you. Doctor. Soren Fielding lived in a brownstone on the edge of the university district. His house was a maze of books, piles of them on the floor, on the stairs, on every surface. He was a man of about 70, wearing a cardigan that had seen better days and holding a pipe he didn't light. He didn't offer me tea. He didn't offer me sympathy. He sat me down in a wingback chair and looked at me with eyes that were terrifyingly intelligent. So he said, Evelyn's granddaughter, the one she was worried about. She was worried about me, I asked. She was worried you were too soft. Doctor, Fielding said bluntly, she told me once, Lucy has a good heart, and her parents will eat it for breakfast if she lets them. I flinched. It was a harsh assessment, but hearing it in his gravelly voice. I couldn't argue. They are trying to say I am having an episode. I said, they forged a medical document. I know, Fielding said. Maya sent me the details. But I don't care about the documents right now. I care about you. Are you crazy? Lucy. No, I said. Are you sure? He pressed. Because a sane person would have cut these people off 10 years ago. A sane person would have realized that love doesn't come with an invoice attached. Why did you wait until they tried to rob you? The question hung in the air, sharp and demanding. Because I wanted a family, I said quietly, because it is hard to admit that the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones you need protection from. Fielding watched me. He didn't blink, and now he asked, now I know. I said, I know that they don't love me. They love the safety net I provide. And I am done being the net. Fielding nodded slowly. He picked up a pen from the side table. That sounds like a rational assessment to me. He said, he pulled a sheet of paper from a folder on his lap. I am going to sign the affidavit, he said. I will certify that I have met with you, that you are oriented, lucid, and clearly the victim of a predatory familial scheme. This document overrides your parents' claim. It unlocks the trust permanently. Thank you, I said. I felt a weight lift off my chest, a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. Don't thank me, Fielding said. Thank Evelyn. She was a cynical old bat, but she was right. She knew the only way to save you was to force you to fight. He handed me the signed paper. You have the money. Lucy, he said, now, what are you going to do with the anger? I looked at the paper. I certify that Lucy Patterson is of sound mind. I stood up. I'm going to use it. I said, I drove home as the sun was setting. The sky was a bruised purple. I had the notary log. I had the screenshot of the group text. I had the affidavit from Dr. Fielding. I had the preservation notices. I walked into my apartment and locked the door. I put the documents on the kitchen island. I looked at the screenshot of the family chat again. She is confused. She might say things that aren't true. I realized then that the money was just the mechanism. The real theft was my reality. They wanted to take my voice. They wanted to make me unreliable so that no matter what they did, no matter how much they took, I could never accuse them. If I was crazy, they were just burdened saints. If I was sane, they were criminals. They needed me to be broken. I went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. I looked tired. There were dark circles under my eyes, but my eyes were clear. I wasn't broken. I was just waking up. I picked up my phone and called Rowan. I have the affidavit, I said, and I have the notary evidence. Good, Rowan said. We are ready to file the injunction. No, I said. Not yet. Rowan paused. What do you mean? They are on a deadline. I said, The end of the quarter. That is Friday. Yes, Rowan said. If we file the injunction now, they will know we have them. I said, they will scatter. They will deny everything. They will say the documents were a mistake. So what do you want to do? Rowan asked. I want to let them think it is working. I said, I want them to think the bank is processing the transfer. I want them to think they have won. Why? Because I want them to commit. I said, I want them to put it in writing. I want them to send the final authorization. I want to catch them with their hands in the vault. There was a silence on the line. Then, I heard a low chuckle. Rowan sounded impressed. All right, Lucy, he said. We set the trap, but be careful. You are playing with sharks. I looked at the reflection in the mirror. I am not a shark. I said, I am the ocean, and they are about to drown. I hung up. I sat on the floor of my living room, surrounded by the evidence of my life, the condo papers, the bank statements, the trust documents. I wasn't sad anymore. The sadness had burned away, leaving something harder, something colder in its place. I opened my laptop and created a new folder. I named it Evidence. I dragged the photo of the notary log into it. I dragged the screenshot of the text message. I scanned the letter from my grandmother and added it. I was building a coffin for my parents' reputation, one file at a time. I looked at the date on the computer screen. Wednesday. 2 days until the end of the quarter. 2 days until the check my father wrote with his mouth would bounce. I closed the laptop, let them panic. I thought, let them sweat. I was done being the daughter who fixed things. I was the glitch in their system now. And I was fatal. The filing of an emergency temporary restraining order is not a dramatic event in the physical world. There is no gavel banging, no police sirens, no sudden hush in a crowded room. It is a quiet, bureaucratic act. It is the sound of a printer humming in Rowan Pierce's office and the soft click of a submit button on a court e-filing portal. We filed it at 9 a.m. on Thursday. The motion was simple. It requested an immediate freeze on any and all distribution changes to the Hartwell-Patterson Trust until a full hearing could be convened regarding the authenticity of the disputed incapacity documents. Rowan looked at me across his desk. He looked tired, but satisfied. That is the wall. Lucy, he said, we just put a padlock on the vault. If they try to move a penny now, they are not just violating bank policy, they are in contempt of court. I nodded, feeling a strange mixture of relief and nausea. I had just sued my parents. Or more accurately, I had just asked a judge to protect me from them. They will know by noon. Rowan said, the electronic service goes to the address on file for the attempted changes, which is their house in Merriwick. I checked my phone. It was silent. Get ready, Rowan said. The frantic phase begins now. He was right. At 1 p.m, my phone rang. It was my mother. I let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, she called again. Then a text. Please pick up. Emergency. I sat in my car in the parking lot of my office building, staring at the screen. The word emergency used to make my heart race. Now, it just looked like a tactic. I picked up on the third call. Lucy. Her voice was ragged, high-pitched. It was the sound of a woman who was losing control of the narrative. Lucy, what have you done? We just got a notification from a lawyer. Hello? Mom, I said. I kept my voice flat, borrowing the calm I had learned from Maya Klein. You froze the trust, she cried. Lucy, you cannot do this. You do not understand what is happening. This is a family catastrophe. A catastrophe, I asked. Like the medical episode you told everyone I was having, forget that. She snapped, abandoning the lie instantly. That was just paperwork. This is real. We are in trouble. Lucy, your father he is not well. The stress is killing him. We need access to liquid capital immediately to stop a situation from spiraling. What situation, I asked. She was crying now, heavy, heaving sobs that sounded wet and desperate. We are going to lose the house, she choked out. We are going to lose everything. The bridge loan didn't come through, and the balloon payment is due tomorrow. If we don't post the collateral, They will seize the accounts. Who is they? I asked. The lender, she screamed. Crownridge. They are not reasonable people. Lucy. They are calling the house. They are calling your father's partners. Crownridge. The name slipped out of her mouth like a dirty secret. It was the same name I had seen on the transfer attempt. Crownridge Capital. Mom. I said, I am not authorizing any transfer. Lucy. Please, she begged. Just a portion. Just $50,000. We can pay it back next month. If you don't help us, we are ruined. Do you want that? Do you want to see your parents on the street because you were too stubborn to sign a piece of paper? I listened to her plead. I listened to the woman who had criticized my spending habits since I was 16, who had told me I was irresponsible for buying a latte. Now begging me to bail her out of a financial crater she had dug herself. I am sorry. Mom, I said, I cannot help you. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from clarity. I called Tessa, Crownridge Capital. I said, I need to know everything. Tessa was a corporate researcher's dream. She dug into public records with the ferocity of a terrier. We met at her apartment that evening, surrounded by takeout containers and open browser tabs. Here it is, Tessa said, pointing to her screen. Crownridge Capital isn't a bank. It is a private equity firm that specializes in distressed real estate assets, predatory lending for developers who can't get traditional financing. She clicked on a map. Look at their current portfolio. I looked. There was a pin dropped in Merriwick, the Merriwick Heights expansion. I read aloud. It was a luxury condo development on the west side of town. I remembered my father talking about it years ago. He had called it his legacy project. He was going to be a silent partner, putting up the initial land equity. He signed a personal guarantee, Tessa said, scrolling through the filing. Look, Gordon Patterson. He put up his primary residence and his entire investment portfolio as collateral for the construction loan. I stared at the numbers. The project was millions over budget. The contractor had walked off the job 3 months ago. The loan had matured. He is underwater. I said, He is not just underwater, Tessa said. He is at the bottom of the ocean. The deadline your mother mentioned, that is the foreclosure date. If he doesn't pay the interest and penalties by the end of the quarter, Crownridge takes the house. They take his car. They take his retirement. I sat back on the sofa. That is why they needed the trust. I whispered, $480,000. It wouldn't pay off the loan, but it would cover the penalties. It would buy them another 3 months. They were going to throw my future into a furnace just to keep the lights on for another 90 days. Tessa said. I felt a cold, hard knot form in my stomach. It wasn't about greed. It was about humiliation. My father, the big man in town, the successful investor, was broke, and he would rather steal from his daughter than admit it to his neighbors. I need to see him. I said, I drove to Merriwick the next morning. I didn't go to the house. I texted my father, meet me at the Skylark Diner. Alone. 10 a.m. He was there when I arrived. He was sitting in a booth in the back, nursing a cup of coffee. He looked smaller than I remembered. His shoulders were slumped, and his skin had a gray, papery quality. I sat down opposite him. I didn't order anything. Dad, I said. He looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed. Lucy, he said. His voice was a rasp. You have to stop this lawyer nonsense. You are making a mistake. I know about Crownridge. I said. He flinched. The name hit him like a physical slap. He put his coffee cup down, and it rattled against the saucer. You don't understand business, he stammered. It is a temporary liquidity issue. The market turned. You signed a personal guarantee. I said, you bet the house. I was trying to build something, he hissed, leaning across the table. For the family. For you and your brother. Don't put this on me, I said quietly. You didn't do this for me. You did it for your ego. And when it went wrong, you tried to steal my money to cover your tracks. I didn't steal, he said, his voice rising. It is family money, Evelyn's money. She would have wanted to save us. Evelyn told me to watch you. I said, she knew you would do this. He looked away, staring out the window at the parking lot. I watched him, waiting for the anger, waiting for the booming voice. But it didn't come. Instead, his face crumpled. "They are going to publish the foreclosure notice in the paper," he whispered. "Next week, everyone will know. The club, the neighbors." I looked at him, and I realized the terrifying truth. He didn't care about the theft. He didn't care about the betrayal. He cared about the image. He was terrified that the world would see him as a failure. "Dad," I said, "you committed fraud. You forged my signature. You tried to have me declared incompetent. That is a felony. I was just trying to keep us from humiliation." He pleaded, "Just a loan. Lucy, just enough to stop the publication. I will pay you back. I swear." I stood up. I looked down at the man who had raised me, the man who had taught me to ride a bike and balance a checkbook. He was a stranger. "I cannot give you the money." "Dad," I said, "the court order is in place. It is over." I walked out of the diner. He didn't follow me. I could see him through the window, his head in his hands, terrified of a newspaper notice. While I walked away with a broken heart, I was halfway back to Briar Glen when my phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was Marowak. I answered. "Hello, Lucy." It was a whisper. "Evan," I asked. "My brother. He was 26, living in the guest house behind my parents' main property. He was the golden boy, the one who never argued, the one who drifted through life on my parents' approval." "Lucy, you have to promise not to tell them I called," he said. He sounded terrified. I pulled over to the shoulder of the highway. "What is it, Evan?" "Are you okay?" "I found something," he said. "I was borrowing Mom's laptop to apply for jobs. She left her email open. There's a folder on the desktop." "What kind of folder?" "It is labeled Lucy Trust Options," he said. I gripped the phone. "What is inside?" "Evan," he took a shaky breath. "There are drafts. Lucy, emails to a doctor I have never heard of. And a script, like a movie script. It has lines for Mom and Dad to say to the bank." "Read me one." I said, "If the agent asks about the daughter's location, state that she is currently in a residential facility and cannot come to the phone." Evan read it slowly, his voice trembling. "And there is a timeline. It says Phase 1 incapacity, Phase 2. Emergency liquidation, Phase 2. They had a plan to liquidate the whole thing." "Evan, listen to me." I said, "I need you to forward those files to me. Right now." "I can't," he whispered. "If they find out." "Lucy, Dad is screaming at the walls. Mom is popping pills. If they know I helped you." "Evan," I said, making my voice hard and clear, "they are committing a crime. If you hide this, you are helping them. Do you want to be an accessory silence? I can send you screenshots," he said. I took pictures with my phone. I didn't want to leave a trail in the sent folder. "Okay," I said. "Send the pictures. And Evan, yeah. Don't touch anything else. Don't look for more. Just send what you have and stay out of their way. I promise." The photos arrived 3 minutes later. They were blurry, taken of a computer screen, but the text was readable. "Email draft to doctor. Aris subject. Urgent capacity review. Body. Doctor. Aris, per our conversation, we need the statement regarding Lucy's instability by Tuesday. The trust officer is asking for verification. We are happy to pay the expedited fee." Expedited fee. They were bribing a doctor. I forwarded the images to Rowan immediately. Then I called him. "We have them." I said. Rowan was silent for a moment. "This is good," he said, "but it is still circumstantial. We need them to send the fraudulent documents directly to you. We need them to commit the act of fraud against you, in writing, now that the court order is pending." "How?" I asked. "Set the trap," Rowan said. "Give them a sliver of hope." I sat in my car and drafted the text. Rowan coached me on the wording. It had to be vague enough to be non-binding, but specific enough to trigger their greed. To Mom and Dad, I have been thinking about our conversation. I understand the situation with the house is critical. I might be willing to consider a one-time loan from the trust to cover the immediate debt, but I need proof that this is a valid emergency. Send me the invoices, the medical bills you mentioned for Dad, And any documentation regarding the trust's original intent, if I can justify it to the lawyer. Maybe we can lift the freeze. I sent it. Then I waited. It took 11 minutes. My phone pinged. An email from my father. Subject trust documents / emergency proof. I opened it. There were 3 attachments. 1. CrownRidge_invoice_final.pdf2 G_Patterson_ medical_statement.pdf3 E_Hartwell_letter_of_intent.pdf. I didn't open them on my phone. I drove the rest of the way to Briar Glen and opened them on my laptop, with Tessa and Rowan on speakerphone. Okay, let's look at the invoice. Tessa said, I opened the Crown Ridge invoice. It was for $65,000. It looked official. Check the metadata, Tessa commanded. I right-clicked on the file and selected Properties. Created today. 11:42 a.m. Author Gordon Patterson. Software Adobe Acrobat Pro. He made it. I said, he made the invoice himself 20 minutes ago. Look at the medical statement. Rowan said, I opened the second file. It was a bill from a cardiologist. It listed a diagnosis, acute stress-induced cardiomyopathy. Metadata check, created yesterday. Author Marlene Patterson. They are forging their own heart attacks, I said. My voice sounded distant to my own ears. Now the letter, Rowan said, the one from your grandmother. I opened the third file. It was a scanned image of a letter, typed on old stationery. To my family, it is my wish that the funds in this trust be used to support the family unit in times of crisis. Family comes first. It was signed Evelyn Hartwell. That doesn't sound like her. I said, family unit. She hated that term. She called us the collective. Zoom in on the signature, Tessa said. I zoomed in. It was pixelated. Now open the fraud affidavit from the bank, Tessa said. The one with the forged signature from the shipping store. I opened the 2 images side by side. It is the same signature, I whispered. It is the exact same scan. They just copy-pasted the forgery from the limited power document onto this fake letter. They got lazy, Rowan said. They are panicking. Rowan, I said, this letter. It claims she wanted the money used for them. It is a fabrication, Rowan said, and we can prove it. Maya has the original deed. Doctor, Fielding has the sealed instructions. This document contradicts the actual legal instrument. So what does this mean, I asked. It means, Rowan said, his voice grimly satisfied, that they just sent fraudulent documents across state lines via electronic mail to solicit funds. That is wire fraud. That is the ball game. I sat back in my chair. I looked at the screen. The evidence was irrefutable. They had taken the bait. They had lied, forged, and fabricated their way into a corner. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt a deep, aching hollow in my chest. They really thought I was this stupid. I said, they thought I would just believe them. They rely on the emotional bond. Rowan said, they rely on the fact that you are their daughter. I closed the laptop. I am not their daughter anymore. I said, I am the prosecution. The weekend arrived, and with it, the annual Patterson family autumn gathering. It was a tradition my mother had invented, a potluck at Aunt Carol's house in Briar Glen. I shouldn't go. I told Tessa, you have to go. Tessa said, if you don't go, they win the narrative. They will tell everyone you are in a facility. You have to walk in there, stand tall, and let them see you are sane. So I went. I wore a sharp navy blazer and jeans. I wore my hair down. I put on lipstick. I looked like a woman who was finalizing a condo purchase, not a woman who was confused. I walked into Aunt Carol's living room. The chatter stopped. 20 heads turned, my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, and in the corner, holding court by the punch bowl, my parents. My mother froze. Her glass halted halfway to her mouth. Lucy, Aunt Carol said, she sounded shocked. We thought you were resting. I smiled. It was the hardest smile of my life. I am fine. Aunt Carol, I said. My voice was clear and steady. I worked a full week. I just closed on my condo papers. Why would I be resting? I saw the confusion ripple through the room. They looked from me to my mother. My mother had told them I was having an episode, but here I was, lucid, calm, and employed. My mother recovered quickly. She rushed over, her face arranging itself into a mask of worried relief. "Oh, Lucy," she cried, reaching for me. "We are so glad you felt up to coming. But are you sure you should be out?" The doctor said. I stepped back. I didn't let her touch me. "Which doctor?" "Mom," I asked. "The one in Merriwick who signed the certificate without seeing me, or the cardiologist who wrote the bill you typed up on your laptop?" The room went deadly silent. My father stepped forward. His face was red. "Lucy," he warned, "don't do this here. You are upset. I am not upset." "Dad," I said, "I am documenting." I pulled out my phone. I held it up, not recording, just holding it. "I just wanted to say hello to everyone," I said. Addressing the room, "I wanted you to see that I'm healthy, and I wanted to let you know that if you hear any stories about my financial incapacity, you should probably check the source." I looked at Evan. He was standing by the stairs, looking pale and terrified. I gave him a tiny, imperceptible nod. "I see you. You are safe." Then I looked at my parents. My father looked like he wanted to hit me. My mother looked like she was calculating a new lie. "We need to talk." "Lucy," my father growled. "Outside." "No," I said. "We don't. We will talk in court. Or rather, my lawyer will talk to your lawyer." I turned to Aunt Carol. "The spinach dip looks delicious." "Aunt Carol," I said, "but I can't stay. I have a lot of paperwork to review." I walked out. I walked out of the house, down the driveway, and to my car. I could feel their eyes on my back. I could feel the shockwave I had just detonated in the center of the family. I got into my car and locked the doors. I didn't shake. I didn't cry. I realized something as I put the key in the ignition. I had gone there looking for some kind of connection, some hope that someone, an aunt, a cousin, would stand up and say, "This is wrong." But they hadn't. They had stared. They had waited to see who would win. They were spectators. I drove away from the house, from the family, from the history. I pulled over a few blocks away and typed a text to Rowan. They sent the fraudulent documents. I confronted them at the gathering. "The bridge is burned," Rowan replied instantly. "Good. We file for the permanent injunction Monday, and we submit the evidence to the district attorney." I looked at the phone. The district attorney. Criminal charges. I closed my eyes. I thought about the access denied screen. It had started as a terrifying barrier. Now, it was my strategy. I was building a wall, a high, thick wall around my life. I wasn't going to fix them. I wasn't going to save them from Crown Ridge. I wasn't going to save them from the humiliation of the foreclosure. I was going to save myself. I started the car. I had a condo to move into. I had a life to build. And for the first time in 32 years, I was truly, completely alone. It didn't feel lonely. It felt like freedom. The digital forensic report arrived on Monday morning, a stack of stapled papers that landed on Rowan's mahogany desk with a dull thud. It was the result of the subpoena we had served on the bank's fraud department, a document that stripped away the mystery of the hack and replaced it with something far uglier: logistics. I sat in the leather client chair, my hands folded in my lap. I was wearing my work clothes, a charcoal blazer and a silk blouse armor for a day that I knew would involve stripping my family down to their raw, criminal components. "Here's the trace," Rowan said. Flipping to page 4, the bank's internal investigation team confirmed the origin of the calls. I leaned forward. "Was it their landline?" I asked. "No," Rowan said. "It was a prepaid mobile device, a burner phone." He pointed to a line of text. "Device activation, October 14th, 3:30 p.m., location Merriwick. Cell Tower 4A, Tower 4A covers the commercial district," Rowan explained. "The convenience store next to the gas station on Main Street." The phone was purchased with cash 20 minutes before the first call to customer service. I stared at the timestamp. My parents. People who prided themselves on their platinum credit cards and their standing at the country club. had driven to a gas station to buy a disposable phone like common drug dealers. And the authentication, I asked. How did they get past the voice protocols? Rowan turned the page. Knowledge-based authentication. He read, the caller failed the voice ID match. Obviously. So the system defaulted to security questions. He listed them out. Question 1. What was the model of your first vehicle? Answer: Honda Civic. Question 2. What is the middle name of your maternal grandmother? Answer: Elizabeth. Question 3. In what year did you open your first checking account? Answer: 2011. I felt a cold hollowness in my chest. These weren't secrets. These were the mundane trivia of my life. My father had bought me that Honda Civic. My mother had helped me open that checking account the summer before college. They hadn't hacked me. They had simply remembered me. They had used their memories of raising me as the skeleton key to rob me. The caller was female. Rowan continued, reading the transcript summary. She claimed to be you. She claimed she had lost her primary phone and was calling from a temporary number while traveling. She was described as distressed but polite. Distressed but polite. That was my mother's signature performance. Rowan closed the file. We have the method, he said. Now we have the picture. He opened his laptop and turned the screen toward me. The investigator pulled the security footage from the shipping store. He said, the place where the notary log was signed. I braced myself. I thought I was ready. I thought that after the invoices and the text messages, nothing could shock me. Rowan pressed play. The video was grainy, a silent, black and white feed from a ceiling-mounted camera. The timestamp in the corner read, October 14th, 9:12 a.m. The door opened. 2 figures walked in. I stopped breathing. It was them. My father was wearing his beige windbreaker and a golf cap. My mother was wearing her oversized sunglasses and a long scarf. They didn't look like criminals. They looked like any other retired couple running errands on a Tuesday morning. They walked up to the counter. I watched my father pull a stack of papers from a manila envelope. I watched my mother lean in, speaking to the clerk, Mrs. Gable, presumably. I saw my mother gesture with her hands, a movement I knew well. It was her I am just a worried mother gesture, hands clasped over her chest. Then, the moment that made me physically ill. My father laughed. It wasn't a maniacal laugh. It was a casual, social chuckle. He said something to the clerk, pointed at the paper, and smiled. He looked relaxed. He looked charming. They were forging my signature on a document that declared me mentally incompetent, a document designed to strip me of my rights and my future. And he was making small talk. I watched them sign. I watched the stamp come down. I watched them gather the papers, wave goodbye, and walk out into the sunshine. I felt bile rise in my throat. I had expected them to look tense. I had expected them to look guilty, but they looked entitled. They looked like they were simply moving money from one pocket to another, confident that the world belonged to them. Turn it off, I whispered. Rowan hit the spacebar. The image froze on my father's back as he held the door for my mother. Chivalry in the service of theft. That is the jury's nightmare, Rowan said quietly. They look normal. They look nice. If we put this in front of 12 people without the context, they will just see 2 loving parents helping a sick daughter. But we have the context, I said. We have the fraud. We have the act of fraud, Rowan corrected. We need the intent. We need to prove they weren't just confused or overzealous. We need to prove they sat down and planned to destroy your credibility. My phone buzzed in my purse. I pulled it out. It was a message from Evan. Don't reply. Just look at your email. I found the smoking gun. I opened my email app. There was a new message from an anonymous account, but the subject line was FWD. Draft. Strategy. I opened it. It was a forwarded email chain. The original draft was dated 3 weeks ago. It was from my mother's email address, addressed to my father, but never sent, just saved in the drafts folder where they collaborated. Subject: the narrative, Gordon. I spoke to Dr. Aris. He is hesitant to sign without seeing her. We need to change the angle. If we just say she is irresponsible, the bank won't release the funds. We need a medical hook. If we frame it as incapacity, they will move faster. The trust has a clause for mental defect. We can use the time she went to therapy after the breakup in 2018 as the foundation. We just need to amplify it. Say she is having a recurrence. Once the certificate is filed, we can access the emergency liquidity provision within 48 hours. We just need to hold the line until the Crown Ridge payment clears. I read it twice. If we frame it as incapacity, they will move faster. We just need to amplify it. They weren't worried about me. They were mining my past trauma, a few months of grief counseling after a bad breakup 4 years ago, and weaponizing it to expedite a bank transfer. I handed the phone to Rowan. "Is this intent?" I asked. Rowan read the screen. His eyebrows shot up. "This is not just intent," he said. "This is malice. This is a roadmap of the conspiracy." He looked at me. "Who sent this?" "My brother." I said, "Evan?" Rowan's expression tightened. "This is dangerous." "Lucy." Why, I asked. "It proves everything." "It proves it to us," Rowan said. "But in court, if we introduce this, your parents will know Evan leaked it. They will destroy him. And more importantly, they will claim he doctored it. They will claim he hacked their account and wrote it himself to frame them. They would do that, I asked. Rowan looked at the frozen image of my parents on the screen. "They forged your signature to pay a construction loan," he said. "Do you really think they wouldn't throw your brother under the bus to save themselves?" I sank back into the chair. He was right. Evan was the weak link. If I used his evidence, I put him in the crosshairs. "We need to corroborate it," Rowan said. "We need to find the chain of custody without exposing Evan. We need to subpoena the email provider directly, forcing them to turn over the drafts folder. If the server produces it, it is evidence. If Evan produces it, it is hearsay. So we have to wait," I asked. "We have to package the truth." Rowan said, "We have to wrap it in so much procedural iron that they cannot break it." I left his office an hour later, feeling the weight of the strategy. Truth wasn't a magic wand. It was a commodity. It had to be handled with gloves. I had one more stop to make. The police station. Maya Klein had insisted on it. File the report. She had said, "Get a case number." I walked into the precinct in Briar Glen. It was a busy, noisy place that smelled of stale coffee and floor wax. I waited at the desk for 20 minutes until a detective called my name, Detective Miller. He was a heavy-set man with kind eyes and a tie that was too short. "Ms. Patterson." "Come on back." I sat at his metal desk. I laid out the evidence, the notary log photo, the bank investigation report, the affidavits from the fiduciary. I told him the story. I told him about the condo I was buying. I told him about the access-denied screen. I told him about the family support expense. I watched his face. I expected him to look bored. I expected him to say, "This sounds like a civil matter." But he didn't. He listened. He took notes. He looked at the photo of the notary log for a long time. "So, let me get this straight." Detective Miller said, "You were at work in Briar Glen. Your badge swipe confirms it. And at the exact same time, 2 people claiming to be your guardians were signing this document in Merriwick." "Yes," I said, "and they used this document to attempt a wire transfer of $480,000. "Yes," Detective Miller leaned back. "That is identity theft," he said, "and grand larceny, and forgery in the first degree." I felt a lump form in my throat. "You believe me?" I asked. He looked at me, surprised. "Ms. Patterson," he said, "you have a time-stamped video, a fraudulent notary entry, and a bank trace. The math doesn't lie. Why wouldn't I believe you?" I looked down at my hands, because they are my parents. I said, "And they are telling everyone I am crazy." Detective Miller sighed. He opened a drawer and pulled out a file folder. "I see a lot of fraud in this job," he said. "Strangers hacking strangers. But the family stuff. It is always the nastiest, because the victims always think it is their fault." He slid a card across the desk. "Here is your case number," he said. "I am opening an official investigation. We will send a request to the Merriwick PD to interview the notary, and we will be contacting the suspects for a statement. Thank you." I said. My voice shook. "You are doing the right thing," he said. "Don't let them talk you out of it." I walked out of the station into the cool afternoon air. I felt lighter, for the first time in weeks. I didn't feel like I was fighting a gaslight. I had a badge number. I had a detective. I had reality on my side, but my parents were not done. On Wednesday, the tone shifted. The frantic texts stopped. The crying voicemail ceased. Instead, I received an email from my father. Subject: a proposal for family unity. I opened it cautiously. Attached was a document titled Patterson Family Agreement. I read it. It was a settlement offer. Though they didn't call it that, it was drafted in soft, conciliatory language, in the interest of avoiding unnecessary legal conflict and preserving the family reputation. Gordon and Marlene Patterson proposed the following one. Lucy Patterson will withdraw all fraud claims and lift the freeze on the Hartwell Trust. 2. Gordon and Marlene Patterson will agree to step back from full guardianship. 3. In exchange for their administrative oversight and years of care, the trust will issue a monthly stipend of $5,000 to the parents for consulting services. 4. A one-time distribution of $60,000 will be made immediately to settle outstanding family liabilities. I stared at the screen. They were negotiating. They were treating the theft of my inheritance like a business merger. They wanted a salary. They wanted $5,000 a month, $60,000 a year for consulting. Consulting on what? On how to rob me. It was an attempt to legalize the theft. If I signed this, I was agreeing that they had a right to the money. I was agreeing to pay them rent for the privilege of not being robbed further. I forwarded it to Rowan with a single word, no. Rowan replied, "Agreed. This is extortion dressed up as a peace treaty. We don't negotiate with terrorists. Even if they brought you into the world." I felt a surge of anger. They still didn't get it. They thought this was about money. They thought if they just lowered the price, I would buy. But then came the second blow, the one I didn't see coming. I was at my desk at work, trying to focus on a logistics timeline, when an email popped up in my inbox. It wasn't from my parents. It was from an anonymous sender, Concerned Citizen 88. The subject line was Fraud Investigation / Lucy Patterson. I froze. I opened it. To Elena Marsh, Senior Director, CCHR Dept, Lucy Patterson. Dear Ms. Marsh, it has come to our attention that your employee, Lucy Patterson, is currently the subject of a serious financial investigation regarding the misappropriation of family trust assets. There are concerns about her stability and her ability to manage sensitive company funds. We felt you should be aware of the potential liability she poses to your firm. My heart stopped. They had emailed my boss. They were attacking my job. They were trying to cut off my income. If they couldn't get the trust money, they would starve me out. They would make me unemployable, unstable, desperate until I had no choice but to come crawling back to them. It was vicious. It was scorched earth. I stood up, my legs shaking. I had to get to Elena before she saw it. But Elena's door was already opening. She stood there, holding a tablet. Her face was unreadable. "Lucy," she said, "can you come in?" I walked into her office. I felt like I was walking to the gallows. "I am so sorry." "Elena," I stammered. "I saw the email. It is a lie. It is retaliation." Elena held up a hand. "Sit down." "Lucy." I sat. I fought back tears. This was my sanctuary. This was the one place where I was competent, respected, safe, and they had poisoned it. Elena placed the tablet on the desk. "I traced the IP address of the sender," she said calmly. I looked up. "You did?" "Yes," Elena said. "Our IT security protocols block anonymous allegations automatically, but I pulled it from the quarantine filter because I saw your name. The IP resolves to a residential address in Merriwick." She looked at me, her eyes fierce. "Lucy, is this your family?" I nodded, unable to speak. The shame was a hot, burning thing in my chest. "They are trying to get me fired," I whispered, "because I stopped them from stealing my trust fund." Elena sat back. She didn't look angry at me. She looked furious for me. "I have been a manager for 20 years, she said. "I have seen competitors try to sabotage my team. I have seen corporate espionage. But I have never seen parents try to torch their own child's career to win an argument. She tapped the screen. I am deleting this, she said, and I am flagging the sender as a malicious entity in our firewall. HR will not see it. It never happened. I stared at her. You aren't going to investigate what Elena asked. You are the best project manager I have. Your accounts are balanced to the penny. I judge you on your work. Lucy, not on the insanity of your relatives. She leaned forward. But you need to hit back. She said, this is crossing a line. This is war. I left her office feeling a strange mix of gratitude and cold resolve. Elena was right. This wasn't a dispute anymore. It was in siege. They were trying to destroy my life to save their own. I called Rowan from the stairwell. They emailed my boss. I said, they tried to get me fired. Rowan's voice went deadly quiet. Retaliation, he said. Tortious interference with employment. That is a new cause of action. Send the letters. I said, send everything. That afternoon, Rowan unleashed the barrage. We sent cease and desist orders to my parents. We sent formal notices to the bank and the fiduciary regarding potential retaliation. We notified the credit bureaus of the identity theft investigation. We forced the conflict out of the shadows and into the harsh fluorescent light of the legal system. No more texts, no more voicemails, no more family agreements. If they wanted to talk to me, they would have to do it through a lawyer. That night, I went to Tessa's apartment. I was exhausted. I felt scraped hollow. I don't know if I can do this, I confessed, curling up on her sofa. I feel like I'm fighting a hydra. Every time I cut off a head, they attack from a different angle. Tessa handed me a glass of wine. You are winning, she said. That is why they are escalating. They are throwing everything at the wall because they are panicked. She pulled out a notebook. But you need to be ready for the next part. She said, you need a script. A script. They are going to try to corner you, Tessa said. Maybe not in person, but in a mediation or a deposition. They will use the triggers. They will say, after all we did for you, they will say, we just want to help. You need boundary statements. She made me practice. Say it, she commanded. I will not discuss the trust without my attorney present. I said, louder. Tessa said, I will not discuss the trust without my attorney present. Good. Now say, my financial autonomy is not up for negotiation. My financial autonomy is not up for negotiation. Say your debts are not my obligation. Your debts are not my obligation. We practiced for an hour until the words felt like muscle memory. I needed them to be automatic. I needed them to be a shield that deployed before my heart could get in the way. Friday morning arrived, the end of the quarter, the day the Crown Ridge payment was due. I woke up early, expecting an explosion, a phone call, a scream. Instead, I got a courier. A man in a uniform knocked on my apartment door at 7 a.m. He handed me a large, thick envelope. Sign here, please. I signed. I took the envelope into the kitchen. The return address was a law firm I didn't recognize. Vance Associates, Marrowick. I opened it. It wasn't a surrender. It wasn't an apology. It was a notice of petition. In the matter of the competency of Lucy Patterson, Petitioner Gordon and Marlene Patterson. Notice is hereby given that a formal hearing has been scheduled to adjudicate the capacity of the respondent to manage the assets of the Hartwell-Patterson Trust. The petitioners assert that the respondent is suffering from acute psychological instability and is vulnerable to undue influence. I read the words. They had done it. They had doubled down. They weren't backing off because of the fraud investigation. They were accelerating. They were formally asking a judge to declare me unfit. They were going to drag me into a room and dissect my sanity to cover their crimes. I looked at the date of the scheduled mediation. Tuesday. I picked up my phone and called Rowan. I got the notice. I said, I have it too. Rowan said, his voice was grim, they are desperate. Lucy, this is the Hail Mary. They are hoping you will fold before the hearing. They are hoping the shame will break you. I looked at the document. I looked at the name, Lucy Patterson listed as the respondent. They wanted a fight about my identity. They wanted to put my mind on trial. Fine. I am not folding. Rowan, I said. Good, he said, because we are going to walk into that room and we are going to dismantle them, piece by piece. I hung up. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. The sun was rising, casting long shadows across the street. The access denied screen was gone, my accounts were locked, but they were safe. The real battle wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the definition of the word family. To them, family meant ownership. To them, I was an asset to be liquidated, but I wasn't an asset. I was the respondent, and I was going to respond. I touched the glass, feeling the cold seep into my fingertips. See you in court, Mom and Dad, I whispered. And this time, I won't be the one crying. The mediation room in the fictional district court of Briar Glen was designed to lower blood pressure. The walls were painted a soothing shade of sage green. The table was a vast oval of polished oak, and the carpet was thick enough to swallow the sound of pacing feet. But as I walked in at 9 a.m. on Tuesday, the air felt thin and sharp, like the atmosphere before a thunderstorm. I took my seat on the left side of the table. To my right sat Rowan Pierce, arranging his files with the precision of a surgeon laying out scalpels. To his right sat Maya Klein, the trust officer from Hartley and Sloan. Her face impassive, and next to her sat Dr. Soren Fielding, the ethics professor, looking like a disappointed owl in his tweed jacket. We were a phalanx of evidence. The door opened, and my parents entered. They had dressed for a funeral. My mother wore a black dress with a modest neckline, her face scrubbed of makeup to emphasize her paleness. She leaned heavily on my father's arm. My father wore a dark suit that was slightly too large for him. As if the stress had shrunk him in the last week. They looked frail. They looked devastated. They looked exactly like two loving parents who were being dragged through hell by a wayward child. But they were not alone. Trailing behind them was a man I did not recognize. He was younger, perhaps 40, with slicked back hair and a suit that cost more than my car. He didn't look like a family lawyer. He looked like a shark in Italian wool. "Who is that?" I whispered to Rowan. Rowan glanced up, his eyes narrowing. "That is Marcus Vane," he said quietly. "He is the general counsel for Crown Ridge Capital." Crown Ridge, the lenders. They weren't just pressuring my parents from the shadows anymore. They were in the room. They were the silent stakeholders in this competency hearing, watching their investment. My parents were effectively puppets. And Marcus Vane was pulling the strings, hoping to cut the trust loose so his company could get paid. The mediator, a retired judge named Mrs. Gable, no relation to the bank manager, tapped the table. "We are here to address the emergency petition regarding the capacity of Lucy Patterson and the stewardship of the Hartwell-Patterson Trust." She said, "Let us begin. My mother's lawyer, a local man named Mr. Henderson, who looked out of his depth next to Vane, stood up. Your Honor," he began, giving the mediator the courtesy title, "we are here with heavy hearts. Gordon and Marlene Patterson are not seeking control for themselves. They are seeking to protect their daughter." He gestured to me. "Lucy has a history of emotional volatility," he said, "while she presents well professionally. Her private life has been marked by instability. In recent weeks, this instability has escalated into paranoia. She has cut off contact, made wild accusations of fraud against her own parents, and refused medical assistance. We believe she is in the midst of a severe breakdown that endangers the family assets." He called my mother to testify. Marlene Patterson walked to the witness chair. She wiped a non-existent tear from her eye. "Mrs. Patterson," Henderson asked gently, "can you tell us why you filed the certificate of incapacity?" My mother looked at me. Her eyes were swimming with performed grief. "I just want my daughter back," she whispered. She took a breath and began to speak. "Lucy has always been fragile," she said. "I remember in 2018, after her breakup, she called me screaming that the world was ending because she lost a parking spot. She stayed in bed for 3 days. I stiffened. I remembered that day. I hadn't screamed about a parking spot. I had been crying because my boyfriend of 2 years had cheated on me, and the parking spot was just the straw that broke the camel's back. It was a normal, human reaction to heartbreak. And last year, my mother continued. Gaining confidence, she became obsessed with this idea of independence. She stopped coming to Sunday dinners. She started hoarding money. She told me she felt like she was being watched. It was clear she was spiraling. I listened as she took the mundane details of my life, my decision to save for a house, my need for boundaries, my normal adult stress, and twisted them into symptoms. She was editing my biography in real time. She was painting a picture of a woman who was erratic, paranoid, and unfit. She made me sound crazy. And looking at the mediator's face, I saw it was working. Mrs. Gable was looking at me with concern. My mother finished with a sob. "We just want to step in as temporary guardians," she said, "just until she is well. We just want to use the trust to pay for a facility where she can get help." She stepped down. The room was silent. Rowan stood up. He didn't look at my mother. He looked at the mediator. "We dispute the characterization of Ms. Patterson's mental state," Rowan said, "but we do not ask you to take our word for it. We ask you to look at the timeline of this sudden concern." Rowan walked to the center of the room. He placed a single piece of paper on the table. "This is the log from First Security Bank," he said. He began to lay down the evidence, card by card, like a magician revealing the trick. On October 14th at 4 a.m., an attempt was made to access Ms. Patterson's account from a device in Marowak. The user failed the password, but passed the security questions. He placed another paper down. "This is the notary log from Pack and Parcel in Marowak, signed at 9 a.m. that same morning. It lists Lucy Patterson as the signer." He paused and looked at my parents, but Lucy Patterson was at her desk in Briar Glen at 9 a.m. "We have her badge swipe records here." My father shifted in his seat. Marcus Vane, the Crown Ridge lawyer, didn't move. He just watched, his face blank. "So," Rowan continued, "we have a signer who is not Lucy. Who was it?" He pulled a flash drive from his pocket and plugged it into the room's projection system. The screen on the wall flickered to life. The black and white footage from the shipping store began to play. There was my father, laughing. There was my mother, wearing the scarf she was wearing right now, signing my name. The silence in the room changed. It shifted from respectful to suffocating. "This is not a medical intervention," Rowan said, his voice hard. "This is a heist." He placed the metadata report on the table. "These are the digital properties of the medical invoices sent to my client. Created by Gordon Patterson, on his home computer, 3 days ago." My father's face turned a mottled purple. He looked at Vane, but Vane was looking at his fingernails, distancing himself from the amateur hour. And finally, Rowan said, "We have the motive." He slid a financial report across the table. "The Crown Ridge loan," he said, "matured yesterday. Default impending. Personal guarantees activated." Rowan leaned on the table, looking directly at the mediator. "They do not think their daughter is crazy, Your Honor. They think she is a piggy bank, and they are trying to break her open before the bank takes their house." My mother let out a gasp. "That is a lie," she shrieked, her composure shattering. "We are trying to save the family." Rowan turned to Maya. "Ms. Klein," he said, "please read the grandmother's instruction." Maya stood up. She held the cream-colored letter with the reverence of a holy text. "This is a sealed letter from Evelyn Hartwell." Maya said, "Attached to the original deed of trust in 1998, she began to read. To the trustee. I am writing this because I know my son. Gordon is a man who believes that image is a currency. If he ever finds himself in debt, he will look to this trust not as a safety net for Lucy, but as a bailout for himself." My father shrank in his chair. It was as if his dead mother had walked into the room and slapped him. "I specifically warn against any attempt to declare Lucy incompetent." Maya read, "I fear that Gordon and Marlene will try to weaponize her emotions. They will call her sensitive. They will call her unstable. They will try to medicalize their disagreement to bypass the distribution locks." I felt a tear slide down my cheek. I didn't wipe it away. They will try to medicalize their disagreement. She had predicted the exact phrase my mother had used. Therefore, Maya concluded, I appoint Dr. Soren Fielding as the sole arbiter of Lucy's capacity. If he says she is sane, she is sane. And if my son tries to challenge it, he is to be removed from the remainder of the estate entirely. Maya sat down. The room was so quiet, I could hear the hum of the air conditioning. My mother was trembling. My father was staring at the table. Marcus Vane closed his folder. He knew it was over. The money was gone. But there was one more thing. We have one final witness, Rowan said. The door opened. Evan walked in. My brother looked terrible. He was pale, unshaven, and wearing a hoodie. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. He walked into the room without looking at our parents. He walked straight to the empty chair next to me and sat down. Evan, my mother whispered. Her voice was full of betrayal. Evan, what are you doing? Evan didn't answer her. He looked at the mediator. I have a statement, he said. His voice cracked, but he cleared his throat and continued. I have a statement regarding the folder on the laptop. He pulled a piece of paper from his pocket. I found a folder on my parents' computer titled Trust Options. He read, It contained drafts of emails to doctors asking for capacity letters in exchange for expedited fees. It contained a script for a phone call to the bank, and it contained a timeline for liquidating the trust to pay Crown Ridge Capital. He looked up. He looked at me. They planned it. Lucy. He said, They told me it was for the family, but it wasn't. It was just for them. My father stood up. You ungrateful little... Sit down. Mr. Patterson, the mediator, barked. Her voice was like a whip. My father sat. I looked at Evan. He was shaking. I reached out under the table and squeezed his hand. He squeezed back. In that moment, the family line was redrawn. It wasn't parents and children anymore. It was the truth-tellers against the liars. The mediator arranged her papers. She looked at my parents with an expression of profound distaste. I have heard enough, she said. She turned to Rowan. The temporary restraining order is made permanent, she said. The Hartwell-Patterson Trust is locked to all parties except Lucy Patterson. She turned to my parents, Mr. and Mrs. Patterson. Your petition for guardianship is dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, based on the evidence of forgery, identity theft, and the testimony regarding the fraudulent medical documents, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation. My mother wailed. It was a real sound this time, a sound of total ruin. Marcus Vane stood up. Crown Ridge Capital withdraws its interest in these proceedings, he said smoothly. He looked at my father. We will be in touch regarding the collateral seizure. Gordon, he walked out. The hearing was over. We walked out into the hallway. I felt strange. I expected to feel triumphant. I expected to feel a surge of victory. But I didn't. I just felt steady. The ground beneath my feet was solid again. My parents were waiting by the elevators. They looked shell-shocked. My father was gray. My mother was clutching her purse like a life preserver. They saw me. They walked over, cornering me before Rowan could intervene. Lucy, my mother hissed. Her eyes were wild. Do you know what you have done? They are going to arrest us. They are going to take the house. You did that, Mom, I said calmly. We did it for you, my father shouted, to save the inheritance. You did it to save your reputation, I said. My mother grabbed my arm. Her grip was tight, painful. If you do this, she said, her voice dropping to a terrifying whisper, if you let them prosecute us, you will be alone. No one will talk to you. The family will hate you. You will have no one. I looked at her hand on my arm. I looked at the woman who had raised me, the woman who had sold me out for a condo development. I gently pried her fingers off my sleeve. I took a step back. I looked her in the eye. I practiced the line in my head. I am not alone. I am not alone. I said, I have my self-respect. And frankly, Mother, I would rather be an orphan than a victim. I turned around. Come on. Evan, I said. My brother stepped away from the wall and followed me. We walked down the hallway. leaving our parents standing by the elevator. Two ghosts in a building full of laws they thought didn't apply to them. I drove back to Briar Glen in silence. Evan was in the passenger seat, asleep. He had nowhere else to go. The locks on the house in Merriwick would be changing soon. Anyway, I pulled into the parking lot of my apartment complex. The sun was setting, casting long orange shadows across the brick. I took out my phone. I opened my banking app. The blue logo spun. There was no red screen, no access denied. The dashboard loaded, checking $4,200, savings $28,000, Hartwell Trust $480,000. The numbers were exactly where they were supposed to be. Nothing had been taken, not a cent. But as I looked at the screen, I felt different. The numbers didn't look like safety anymore. They looked like survival. I had saved the money, but I had paid a price that wasn't listed on the ledger. I had paid with the illusion of my childhood. I had paid with the comfortable lie that my parents were good people who just made mistakes. I was rich, and I was free, and I was an orphan of my own making. I put the phone in my pocket. I woke Evan up. "We are home," I said. He looked at the building. "Is it over?" he asked. I looked at the sky. "The fraud is over." I said, The rest is just beginning." We walked up the stairs. I made coffee. We sat on the balcony and watched the cars drive by. My phone buzzed. I looked at it. It was a text from an unknown number. I opened it. "This isn't finished. You still have the land rights. Call me." Vane. I stared at the message. Marcus Vane. Crown Ridge. They weren't done. My father's debt was so deep that even the trust wouldn't have covered it all. And now that they couldn't get the cash, they were looking for other assets, land rights. I remembered something Grandma Evelyn had said about a small plot of land in the county that was technically in my name. A useless strip of marshland. I smiled. A cold, sharp smile. Let them come. I blocked the number. I looked at Evan. "Do you know how to cook lasagna?" I asked. He blinked. "No." I stood up. "Well," I said, "we have time to learn." I walked into the kitchen. I washed my hands. I washed away the ink of the courthouse, the grease of the diner, the sweat of the fear. I was Lucy Patterson. I was 32. I had a condo. I had a brother. I had a trust fund. And for the first time in my life, I had absolutely no one telling me who I was supposed to be. The access denied sign was gone. The world was open. And I was just getting started. Thank you for listening to Lucy's story. It is a heavy journey, walking through the realization that the people who should protect you are the ones hunting you. I hope the ending gave you a sense of justice, even if it came with a cost. I would love to hear from you. Where are you listening from? Have you ever had to set a hard boundary with family to protect your own future? Please consider subscribing to Revenge Stories for more tales of justice, resilience, and the complicated drama of family life. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. Until next time, keep your passwords safe and your boundaries stronger.